Welcome to This Explainer. I am so excited to get into this one with you today because I'm going to start by dropping a bit of a bombshell right out of the gate. If you ask practically anyone on the street what ruins a long-term relationship, they will almost always tell you it's fighting. Constant bickering, arguing, raising voices, the whole shebang. But the data and the research we are looking at today reveal something entirely different. The biggest relationship killer is absolutely not fighting. The actual killer is something far quieter and honestly, far more common. It's silence.
Okay, let's dive into this. Because there is a massive, frankly crazy disconnect between our expectations and reality. We tend to picture explosive arguments and dramatic door-slamming exits. We think a relationship full of perfect harmony, where no voices are literally ever raised, is the ultimate goal. But what actually ends relationships? It's the silence after the fight. A quiet relationship is not necessarily a healthy one. In fact, that quietness, that prolonged, heavy silence that sets in after a disagreement is the exact thing that quietly suffocates a bond.
There is this incredibly pervasive myth out there. Most people think a good relationship means avoiding conflict. We are so conditioned to believe that if we're truly meant for someone, or if we have this totally solid partnership, we just won't argue. So because of this flawed belief, when a disagreement inevitably happens, panic sets in. We think, oh no, we're fighting. This means something is terribly wrong. So what do? We shut down. We retreat to our respective corners. We go completely radio silent. We just kind of wait for the storm to blow over, assuming time will magically heal the friction. We're essentially using silence as a shield.
But here is the hard truth. Silence isn't peace. It is just a delay. When you retreat into silence after an argument, you might feel this temporary sense of calm because, well, the act of yelling or bickering is stopped. The room is quiet. But that quiet is a total illusion. You haven't actually resolved the underlying issue. You've merely hit the pause button. You're just delaying the inevitable. The friction is still sitting right there in the middle of the room, completely invisible, but absolutely felt by both of you.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because this right here is where the real damage happens. First off, disagreements do not magically disappear just because you stop talking about them. That is a hard truth we all have to swallow. Second, and this is the genuinely dangerous part, unresolved issues stacked up. Think of it like a physical weight. You have one silly fight about whose turn it is to do the dishes, you go silent, you sweep it under the rug. Okay, that's one block. A week later, there's a misunderstanding about weekend plans and you do another retreat into silence. Boom, that's another block. Emotionally, these unresolved, silent moments physically stack on top of each other. Every single time you choose silence instead of resolution, that pile just gets higher and heavier.
And that stacking leads us to a pretty chilling chronological progression that maps out the exact decay of a relationship. It starts at step 1, an unresolved disagreement. You had a fight and you went silent. If you do this enough times, you slide right into step 2, a pattern forms. It literally becomes your default couple's reflex to just ice each other out. Then we hit step 3, distance grows. Now this is the absolutely crucial stage. The stacking of all those unresolved issues creates a massive wall. You're sharing a home, maybe even sharing a bed, but you feel miles and miles apart. And finally, step 4, the relationship ends. I really want to emphasize this heavily. It is the distance in step 3 that actually ends the relationship, not that initial fight back in step 1. The silence created the distance, and the distance killed the bond.
So how on earth do we stop this decay? Let's shift gears and look at the solution, because it is remarkably straightforward and, honestly, incredibly empowering. On one hand, we have the wrong fix, fighting less. Couples who last aren't the ones who figure out how to never disagree. I mean, come on, that's practically impossible if you are two individual human beings. The right fix is closing the loop faster. They don't avoid the disagreement, they simply handle the aftermath completely differently. It is entirely about the speed of repair.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how clearly we can contrast these two behaviors. On one side, we have the failing habit, waiting for a fight to blow over, letting hours turn into days of awkward, frosty silence. But on the other side, we have the lasting habit, coming back within the same day. This is the vital behavioral pivot. Even if it was just a tiny bickering match over the groceries, the couples who actually go the distance have a strict internal clock. They literally do not let the sun go down on their silence. They re-engage on the exact same day to close that open emotional loop.
And how exactly do they do that? Well, and this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate golden tool for your relationship toolkit. They say this: I don't want this sitting between us. Can we talk it through? That's it. It's not some grand, sweeping, romantic gesture. It's not holding a boombox outside a window or buying an expensive gift. It is just a simple, vulnerable, deeply effective string of words. Coming back into the room and saying this exact sentence is the highest form of victory for your relationship. Let's break down exactly why this simple sentence works so incredibly well. First, it signals that the relationship matters way more than being right. When you say those words, you are consciously putting your ego aside. You aren't even conceding that you were wrong in the argument. You're just saying, hey, us being okay is more important to me than winning this fight. Second, it acts as a more powerful fix than any grand gesture ever could, because it directly addresses the emotional tear. And third, it actively prevents that deadly distance we talked about earlier from ever taking root. You are literally stopping the stacking process dead in its tracks.
So, the crucial point is this: 20. 10, 20, 30 years. When you look at couples who feel genuinely close and deeply connected after 2 decades together, their secret is not some magical absence of conflict. No way. It is their absolute, stubborn refusal to let a disagreement sit. They have mastered the habit of coming back on the same day and utterly refusing to let silence become the third partner in their relationship.
Which brings us to a challenge for you to take away from our explainer today. Will you let your next disagreement sit, or will you close the loop today? I want to leave you with this provocative thought. The very next time you have a disagreement, even a tiny, silly one, and you feel that familiar urge to retreat into silence, just stop. Don't let it sit past the same day. Walk right back into that room and use that sentence, even if it feels incredibly awkward in the moment. Will you choose the easy comfort of silence, or will you choose the courage to strengthen your bond? The choice, and ultimately the future of your relationship, is entirely up to you. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.